Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. On this episode, we'll be celebrating my 300 episodes of The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. We'll take a look back at some of the interviews I've done, talk about some of my favorite episodes, and much more. I turned the tables over to Vincent to ask me a lot of good questions, and this was really a lot of fun. I want to take a moment and thank you all for sticking with me for 300 episodes, and I look forward to more in the future. Alrighty, lots to talk about in this episode. I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. So let's jump in and let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. Today, I'm excited to have back with me for my big 300th episode. Please welcome back for maybe his 200th episode. Who knows? Mr. Vincent LaRussa. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Happy New Year to
Yes.
all and to yourself, even though we have spoken before this, but we could pretend that I haven't spoken to you, which is highly inaccurate.
It would be highly inaccurate, but yes, happy New Year to everybody who's out there. And I hope you all enjoyed your merry holidays, celebrating however you may do that. And I hope you had a healthy and happy New Year. And I hope you all have a wonderful 2025.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. How was your New Year, Bloody? I know we spoke a bunch of time, but I think you had a good New Year, right?
Yes, it was. Everything was nice. Yes,
Very good.
really good.
Very good. Well, I've been saying, I said it right before the holidays that, I was coming up on my 300th episode on the podcast, and you're like, oh, we got to do something special. And I was like, yeah, well, whatever. And you're like, will you just celebrate yourself just once in your life? Which is so typical for me to not to make a big deal out of things. But then, last night when we decided that we were going to do this, I was like, 300 episodes is I guess kind of a big deal. If I look at some of my all-time favorite TV shows, be it Seinfeld, Big Bang Theory, Seinfeld, I think only had like 180 episodes. Big Bang, which is one of my all-time favorite shows, 279, I think it was. And even other classic shows, like I know one of your favorites, Three's Company, is about a buck 70 or so. I'm like, all right, you know what? Maybe 300 is a little bit of a big deal. It certainly is if you're bowling and you get a 300 score. But
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I was like, maybe because what I usually do is I'll compare myself to some of these other podcasts that are out there, and I know that especially some of these Kiss podcasts that are really good and been doing it a long time are at 500, 600 episodes. And when I think of that, I'm like, yeah, 300 is not a big deal. But then I'm like, it is. It is. When I first set out to do this, never in my wildest dreams did I think I would do 300 episodes. And I am so thankful that you were a part of this with me, Bloody.
Well, it's been an honor and a privilege to do what we've done all our lives practically, and just to put it in front of people. I mean, we've said it before. We've discussed car rides, trips, concerts, these kind of like, what's your favorite this, what's your, we would rank things, and
Yes.
to actually put it out there to people for them to provide, even if it's one person gives an opinion on something, I'm amazed at that. And it's really nice to have built this little community or help you, if I could say help you build
Yes.
this
Oh,
community
absolutely.
of people, and yeah, I mean, it's well deserved. It's well deserved.
Thank you. And I think back to, I think it was 2014 when you and I were driving back and forth to the Indie Kiss Expo, right? That's where I think Paul Stanley was there. And I swear our car ride was one of our look back episodes. I think we were listening to like Animalize and Asylum and Crazy Nights. And we're like, what do you rate this song on a scale of 0 to 10? And we literally, that's what we spent hours in the car ride doing. And it's just funny now, fast forward 10 years later, that's what we do recently on the podcast, right? So that
Yeah.
was kind of like the start. I remember doing that, and we were like, this would be a fun podcast. This would be, I bet you people. And I was like, well, there's so many Kiss podcasts out there. I don't want to only do a Kiss thing, and it'll just be like a kind of a copy and a watered down version of stuff that I think is really good out there. But that drive to Indy to go see Paul Stanley at the Kiss Expo to me was the start of the wheels turning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you're one to never give yourself any credit. Once somebody once called you the salt of the earth.
That's true.
Um, and your personality, even for because there are other podcasts where it's two people, three people, and as you said before, there's a lot of good podcasts, not just Kiss podcasts that are out there. But I think you don't have as many subscribers or many people who view your podcast if it wasn't what you bring forward as a personality. You think of why we love such TV shows as you mentioned. It was because of the personalities and the characters
Yes.
on the show. And certainly, you're a character. You're always going to be a character in my eyes.
Thank you.
And I'm sure you would say the reverse to me, probably even more so.
Absolutely. Oh,
So
to me, you're the biggest character I know.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, if
I mean, wait,
somebody
what did my parents say when we were growing up? I always know when you're on the phone with Vinny. I could
right,
just, my parents
yeah,
wouldn't even hear the other side of the conversations. They'd be
yeah,
like, we know when you're on the phone with Vinny.
yeah. Well, I take that as the highest compliment.
Absolutely.
Um, but yeah, I mean, if you have somebody who's presenting themselves, and I know this sounds familiar. Hi, my name is Mike Brunn, and I want to talk to you today about and somebody who just doesn't have any sort of persona. It's people are just not going to be engaged.
Hmm.
It's great having the guests, but you have to bring forward, what you've always tried to do. It's always being very honest and upfront, non-controversial, not looking for the clickbait and all that other stuff that a
Right.
lot of and again, I'm not putting down any podcast, but you don't go for that kind of thing.
Right.
I know in your eyes, you'd rather have less viewers
Agreed.
if you didn't have to, try to entice people by having, clickbait or something
Right.
controversial. And I know even personally, because we've had a lot of discussions on the side about perhaps it's been, certain artists or stuff that you've told me in confidence. You certainly could have brought that forth on
Right.
the podcast and shared that with people, but you decided not to do that because of your integrity and just kind of the respect for that artist, even if you're at odds with somebody. Not saying you're at odds, but disagree with them, whatever.
Hmm.
You kind of just kept it to yourself, which I mean, that's to be admired because you're just not looking to be successful based on, oh, I'm going to get this one back or I'm going to get that one back.
Well, to me, my biggest thing was always, yes, it's my show, but especially when I have these musical guests on, the show is not about me. People are not tuning in to see this wonderful, beautiful face. I know that, right?
I
People are
do.
tuning,
I mean,
well, except for you,
yeah.
uh,
And your mom.
and my mom, maybe,
Yeah.
right? My mom wouldn't even have a clue how to find the podcast. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
to me, the show is about whoever the guest is.
Mm-hmm.
And, while I will ask them questions to kind of pry through some stuff, at the end of the day, a lot of the guests that are on, I'm getting through publicists and they're here to promote stuff. And I'm going to respect that. And it doesn't mean that I have to be a fan. And there's been artists that have been on my show that I'm not a fan of. It doesn't mean I have to agree with everybody who's on the show. And to me, that's okay. The show is not about me in those moments. It's about the guests, it's about the artists. And I want them to feel comfortable coming on. And I want them to be able to promote their stuff. And you know what? I'll say this. I think probably one of my all-time favorite moments, and I won't name the guest, right? But this guy's been on my show a couple of times. And when we were done recording, we were both getting ready to disconnect. And just as I was going to disconnect and he was reaching over to disconnect, I hear him go, "Oh man, that was awesome. What a great time." And that wasn't meant, and it didn't make it into the episode, but it was like that comment, and it wasn't directed towards me. He was kind of just like saying it under his breath, just like how
Mm.
excited he was. And to me, that moment was one of my all-time favorite moments on the podcast, which nobody has seen ever before. But to me, that was really cool. When one of my guests, as they were disconnected, like, "Oh man, that was awesome. What a great time." To me,
Yeah.
that's what it's all about. And that's what music is all about, having fun and having a great time. You could not like things. That's okay. And, look, when we go through some look backs, I'll give bad ratings on songs and stuff. I'll give bad ratings on an album, but music's about having fun. And if you're not having fun, then find something else to do. to have
Hmm.
fun. And that's why
Hmm.
I do this, is to have fun, not to have the clickbait headlines and all of that. This is about having fun, at least to me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally, like I said, I've witnessed it. We've had conversations. Like my favorite thing is like when you tell me you're gonna have a certain guest, you'll say to me, "Is there anything you think I should ask them?"
Mm-hmm.
And it's always nice when I hear you ask a question that I've brought to you, and you're like, "Oh," or you
Yeah.
say, "Oh, I didn't think of that. That's a good one."
Right. Yeah.
And it's always a fun thing knowing when you're gonna have somebody who we both admire before it's out there in the for public consumption,
Yes.
to kind of have those pre-discussions. And it's to me, it's, again, it's bringing a little part of the show, I feel, to 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 give you or help bring you a really good product. I do see it as a product, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You
In
can't buy
some
it in the
ways, this.
store.
No,
Not something
you
you can
can't.
buy in the store,
No,
but
no, you can't. And in some ways, yes, it is a product, but to me, it's also just a hobby. At the end of the day, I do
well,
have a real 9 to 5 job, and that's what, puts the dinner on the table. And it is a product, but it's also a hobby.
yeah, I I could relate to that in a musical sense,
Right.
So, but the interesting thing what we're going to do today, and people don't know this, is how we're going to flip this. We're going to flip it. I'm going to be. I think I did this once before,
I was
but
gonna say,
I'm going to be the MC minus the hammer, and I'm going to be asking you a bunch of questions or that I've jotted down, and we have not gone over this stuff.
no,
I know we as we always do, even for album reviews or anything we'll discuss, we just say this is what we're going to discuss. That's
right,
it. No
right,
discussion. There's never ever. I could really say with all honesty, all the episodes we ever done, we say what the subject matter is going to be, but we never kind of share. Okay, I'm going to mention this. You're going to mention
right,
that. So, because always there's sometimes where you say something. Oh, I was going to mention that. You know what I
right,
mean? Like he's
yeah,
stealing each other's thunder.
right,
So
right.
before we get into that, and I take control of this podcast, is there anything else you want to say before we launch into this?
No, I think something you just said to me is important. And that's one of the things when you and I are doing these is that I always wanted it to be genuine and just natural, right? So there's many times I'll say to you, hey, let's do a look back on, I don't know, Kiss Asylum. And you say, okay. And that's it. That'll be the only thing that we discuss. I won't say to you,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I want to talk about the outfits or the staging, or I want to talk about when you saw them on that tour. It'll just be like, we're going to talk about that album, period.
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah, any topic that we decide. We always just literally, it's a 30-second conversation. It's almost like, to some degree, Curb Your Enthusiasm when it was on
Mm.
TV, right? They didn't have a script, right? That they had like, this is what the episode is going to be about, and then they would ad lib through the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of the approach that we've taken here. And I think that it's important because then to me, that's how it comes across as genuine. If it was all scripted, it's like, all right, this is going to be the first question, this is going to be the second question, then it kind of becomes, I don't know, a little stale to me that way.
Mm-hmm.
But
I agree.
saying that, so you wanted to turn the tables on me, and I think you did this, like you said, once before. And I'm a little scared because I have no idea, no idea what the questions are going to be here and what the topic is going to be. But I know we're going to celebrate the 300 episodes, and it's kind of funny because I've said this to you before. With 300 episodes, I hate to admit this, even some of the guests that I've had on my show, I've had, I've done well over 100 interviews, 100, 140, 150 interviews. I don't remember all the people who've been on the show. I hate to say that. There's times that I'll be sitting there, and I think I was saying this to you or maybe my wife a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know how this could happen. I forget that I had Geezer Butler on the show. I mean, hello, freaking Geezer Butler, one of the biggest
Mm.
icons that I've ever had on the show. And I forget that I interviewed Geezer Butler. So I'm quite sure there might be some things you asked me about. I'm like, I don't remember. I don't
Mm.
remember because it's crazy. I used to think like, how could Eddie Trunk not remember the blah blah blah? And then I'm like, right, because he's interviewed 20,000 people, and it
Mm.
becomes, you don't want to say it becomes routine because it's never routine, but it starts to blur together. So I'll just put that out there as you get ready to ask me some of these questions, that there could be things I don't remember. And my
Okay.
apologies ahead of time.
All right. Well, I'm certainly going to be asking you questions that are going to probably have to jar your memory a little bit.
Oh
So
boy. Okay.
it's it, And I figure if you do remember what it is, if it's at the forefront of your memory, then it's probably the strongest feeling you have about whatever that particular person might be or moment or whatever.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
so
Yes.
yeah.
All right. Go ahead.
And
Let's
and
do
this
this.
and this is not in any particular order, but
Okay.
so
Just to make it a little harder for me, also. Thank you.
exactly. Um,
I like the challenge.
so what was your favorite episode?
I mean, obviously, my first thought is always going to be Paul Stanley, right? Because
Okay.
you and I joked about that. Not, well, not really joked. You said to me when I first started this, what guest would you want? I instantly said Paul Stanley, but it's never going to happen. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
don't say it's never going to happen. And it's just grown up a huge Kiss fan and all of that. Obviously, Paul was my guy all through the 80s. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd have Paul Stanley on. And then the way it happened, where they asked me, quote, if I would mind interviewing Paul Stanley,
Mm,
because, and I think I've shared it on the episode, on one of the episodes before. That started off with me interviewing Gene Simmons for the Dubai concert.
right.
And then he couldn't do it, blah, blah, blah. A few weeks later, the management team contacted me, and I didn't know these people. They didn't know me from a hole in the wall, other than they knew my show, and they said, "Would you mind interviewing Paul Stanley?" And I nearly fell off my chair, you know.
Yeah.
Look, for me, that'll always be my favorite episode. But also, I have to mention, because to me, I always think of this one, the first time I had Dee Snider on. Right? And anybody who's interviewed Dee Snider, and I go through his PR team, knows that he sets up interviews in 20-minute intervals, and he does them every 30 minutes so that this way he has a 10-minute break in between. So his PR team told me, hey, he does 20-minute interviews, but if he's having a good time, he'll let you go to the full 30 and then he'll start the next one right away. And I was like, all right, well, this is the first time I'm interviewing Dee Snider. It's like maybe my 40th episode or so. I'll probably get to 20 minutes, and that's really cool. And about 7 or 8 minutes into the episode, he's like, oh, I could go to the bottom of the hour if you want. And nobody
Mm,
else, I left it in the episode. Nobody else knew what that meant, but I did. And at that moment, I was like, that's pretty freaking cool. Dee Snider's having fun during my interview, that he's willing to go longer than the time we were allotted. So that's something that just always sticks in my mind to me as a favorite moment during one of my interviews.
okay. Those are good. Those are good ones, and I remember those.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that being said, what do you think has been your greatest achievement of the show? And that
Ooh.
doesn't have to be necessarily having a guest or whatever. What do you feel when you think about what your show represents and what you're putting out there? What is the greatest achievement?
I guess the fact that we've done 300 episodes, and I say we because you've been a big part of that, and the feedback has been enormously positive. When I started doing this, I was like, all right, I have to be prepared when you're putting yourself out there that people aren't going to like it. People are going to have negative things to say. I mean, you read anything online, and there's
Mm-hmm.
so much negativity online. And I was like, all right, I have to be prepared for that. And I was. And remarkably, over 300 episodes, the number of negative comments I've received is, I'm going to say, less than 2%. And it might even be less than 1%. That blows my mind, especially when I've had guests on, like, let's say, Vinnie Vincent, who everybody, he was polarizing, and then people had opinions one way or another. But the feedback on the interviews themselves have always been positive. So to me, and it goes back to what you were saying at the top of the way I wanted to do this, that to me is the greatest accomplishment, more than any guest, more than any number of episodes, is just the positive feeling that I've helped bring into the music community. I'm excited about that.
Mm-hmm. Good answer.
Thank you.
Now this is going to
Vincent
be a hard.
approved. All
This may be a hard one for you to answer.
right.
What has been your biggest disappointment?
Ooh.
Like, and when I say disappointment, it could have been you were looking forward to an episode or something like that.
I think the fact that you've been on 200 times, no.
I figured that was going to be it.
No. I'm going to say it's not even a real disappointment necessarily, but I came really close to having Tony Iommi on about 2 years ago. We were back and forth a number of times, and I was excited. I'm like, friggin' Tony Iommi. I mean, you're talking about one of the all-time classic musicians, and then it just didn't happen. We went back and forth, and then just it fell through. They were literally to the point of saying to me, hey, yeah, sometime in late March we'll do that. And I was like, all right, this is good. It's the beginning of March. They're going to set up a date. Um, Tony Iommi, Stuart Copeland was supposed to be on, and I was in communication with his team for months. And he ended up deciding not to do any podcasts, and that was so disappointing to me. I was like, because these are classic, all-time classic musicians. And Alice Cooper, I went back and forth with his team for a year. So those to me are the disappointments. But I look back at it and I say, well, I still had over 100 plus guests on the show. I can't look at what I didn't have, but if I'm looking at disappointments, that's probably the ones I say, oh, so close to such huge names and just didn't happen for whatever reason.
Okay. Okay.
I'm also disappointed you're not wearing a black shirt today. Looks great.
It is great.
The 300 episode. How can you not be wearing a black shirt?
This weather's got me, boy.
Okay.
I am not a fan. We're in the Northeast, winter. It's been freaking cold as ass.
Yeah, I
Not
was
into
shoveling this
weather.
morning. I was literally shoveling this morning. Like,
Well, I wasn't
God
shoveling. I
damn.
was sweeping
Okay.
snow. It was sweepable snow,
Yes,
which I prefer.
it was
But
probably sweepable. You're right.
yeah. Um, if you had to pick just one person and had one podcast left, who
Ooh,
would it be?
Peter Chris.
Hmm, Good answer.
Long time Kiss fan, original member. Um, I just love the happy place. We spoke about, how I try to bring happiness through the podcast. And I just feel like he's in such a good place. I'd love to have him on, even just for 10, 15 minutes. Peter Chris.
I wouldn't argue with you on that
No, I
one.
know. And there's other guests I wish I could have on, but if you're asking me one final episode, one guest only, Peter Chris.
Okay. What show did you think would get more views and was surprised of the outcome?
Kelly Keggy, Night Ranger.
Hmm.
That didn't do, and maybe D. Snyder, both of them. I did but D. Snyder doesn't surprise me in hindsight because D. Snyder floods the market with interviews.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure after a while, people are like, all right, enough. I've heard everything I need to hear from D. With no disrespect to D, I think I had him on 3 times. I loved having him on, but Kelly Keggy doesn't flood the market. I know Night Ranger is not an arena or a stadium band, but I also felt like, all right, they have, enough following, especially a rabid fan base, that I thought that would do better than it did. For me, it's one of my favorite episodes because I freaking grew up loving Night Ranger and Kelly Keggy, and I was motoring the whole time I was doing that. But and he was a great guest, but I thought that would do better than it did.
Okay. That being said, we might have a Night Ranger related episode coming forth.
I think we're going to, yes. If I could
good.
get my brother on board, which he might be making his debut on the podcast.
So 2 things.
Yes.
People who have not seen the D. Snyder episode and the Kelly Kagi, watch it.
Yes, please.
And Mike's brother, I won't use his name. You have no choice now. Now you have to do it.
That's right. That is true.
You put it out there in the universe.
I put it out there in the universe. So he did say he would do it in January. So let's see.
Okay. Well, today is the 11th, so he's got what about? I don't feel like doing math right now.
20 days. 20 days left in the month.
Okay. I wasn't sure if there's 31 or 30 days.
There's 31 days in January. See, those questions I know. Those are easy.
Yeah. Okay. Who was the person hardest to get on your show?
Ooh. Hardest to get. I've been fortunate that, again, because I'm dealing with the PR teams, that a lot of times I get emails from them. I'm not the one pursuing it. They send me an email and then I instantly set things up. D. Snyder, the first time I had him on, was canceled 2 or 3 times, only because he was in the process of moving, not because he was being difficult. And it did happen. Difficult to get on. I've been blessed that way. There's some guests, like I just said, that never came on who said that they would, but usually once I get involved with the PR teams, it happens sometimes within a matter of a day or two, sometimes within less than a week. It's happening. So yeah, I guess because I'm blessed that I'm dealing with the PR teams, it's a little bit of a professional thing. It's not back and forth. I'm not emailing with Ace Frehley personally. I'm emailing with his PR team. And these people, this is what they do for a living, and they take it serious.
Can you name somebody who you thought you were going to have on and it fell through for whatever reason?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying before, whether it's Alice Cooper or Tony Iommi or Stuart Copeland, those are the three biggies that I'm like,
Mm,
damn, damn, damn.
yeah.
And Alice Cooper, I mean, I guess I could say that was difficult because I went back and forth by email with them for a year. And they were always, always very receptive. Yes, this sounds great. Alice would love to do it, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, we could promote this album. We could promote this tour. Yep, yep, sounds great. Hey, he's traveling. He'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll connect with you in 2 weeks and we'll let you know a day that works. 2 weeks later, it doesn't happen. Um, so, I mean, those are the big three to me: Alice Cooper,
Mm,
Tony Iommi, Stuart Copeland. Man, if I could have those three, I would love to have.
okay. If there was one question you could have asked to any guest and thought of it afterwards, what was it and who was it?
Oof. I don't know if I'll be able to answer that because I'll say this: every single guest that I've had on afterwards, I'm like, God damn, I should have asked this.
Yeah.
One of the things that maybe people don't realize is I go in with 20, 30, 40, 50 questions already pre-established. And then you kind of go with the flow of the conversation, right? And you see where it goes, and you end up not asking some of the questions that you have. You end up asking questions that you didn't have based on the way the conversation goes. But I'm also given an allotment of time.
Mm-hmm.
And there comes a point where you have to say, all right, this person is here. I'm working with the PR teams. They're here to promote an item. I have to make sure they do that. I have to be respectful of that. I can't ask 20 questions that Mike Brunn wants to know because that's not why they're here.
Mm-hmm.
But every time I hang up, I'm like, damn, I should have asked this. I should have asked that. The one that I wish I asked, this one comes to mind from time to time. When I had Paul Stanley on, and he was singing some Kiss songs and how they related to his Soul Station. And then he said, yeah, even a song like What Makes the World Go Round is based off of R&B. And he didn't sing a bar from that. And I'm like, I should have asked him to sing a bar of that just because he's never sang it live or anything. I would have
Mm,
loved to just hear him sing, even just a line of it. So that's not necessarily a question, but I'm like, damn, I should have just tried to prod him and ask him to sing a line of
mm.
that. But every single interview, I'm like, damn, I should have asked this. I should have asked that. That's just the nature, I think, of what I do. I don't beat myself up over that because I know I'm only, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, a half hour if I'm lucky. And there's only so much you could ask.
And in the damn I should have, let's just use that as a theme here. Who do you wish you could have interviewed who's no longer with us since you've done the show and has
Ooh,
passed?
ooh, that's a really good question. It would never have happened. Eddie Van Halen. I mean, come on. It would
Yeah.
probably would never have happened, but my God, I mean, Eddie's for our lifetime the number one guitar god, and yeah, obviously he passed away a few years ago. Again, I don't think that would ever happen. I've tried Michael Anthony a number of times. I haven't had any luck there, but obviously he's still with us. Um, I guess Eddie Van Halen would be the first one that comes to mind. Not, although I guess if I was gonna almost have Tony Iommi, why couldn't have I had Eddie Van Halen? But
Mm-hmm.
that's the one that comes to mind. I would have loved to interview Eddie.
I had a feeling you were going to pick him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was thinking that when I asked the question, and that wasn't on my bulleted list based on what you said,
Really?
the comedy
Okay.
man, I threw
Interesting.
that one out there.
Why do you
That I
think I'd
had.
say Eddie? That's interesting.
I just kind of quickly in my Rolodex thought about the episodes we did of people who
Hmm.
passed, and that was the number one
Yeah.
that came to my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's
Um,
probably also the biggest name of somebody
mm,
who passed since I started doing this. But yeah, that's I mean, look, I'd love to have had any time, even privately. I met Alex this year, and even just talking to him for a minute or two was really cool. So I can't imagine what it would have been like talking to Eddie also. That would have been awesome. But oh well. Maybe one day in a different form.
mm. Now I know this is called the Rock Experience with Mike Brunn,
Yes.
and this question I'm going to ask you, and you'll understand why I'm asking this,
Mhm.
because the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, as we know, don't have rock and roll artists in it.
Yes. And
And
we've
I
done some
remember,
episodes on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and
yes,
people they've let in and not let in over the years. We've
right.
done that.
That being said, I know a long time ago I was kind of trying to encourage you to expand out your brand a bit, to not just do music and rock and roll and into like media and movies and stuff like that. If you were to expand your show, and maybe it was The Rock and something
Yes.
experience with Mike Brunn. If there could be one celebrity, doesn't even have to be a celebrity, it could be an entrepreneur, it could be
Mhm.
someone else you admire out
Entrepreneur. I like
entrepreneur, like
that.
that entrepreneur.
Entrepreneur. We
Yeah,
gotta make this a little
yeah,
less serious. Entrepreneur.
entrepreneur. I think I learned that on Sesame Street.
Oh wow.
Um, E is for entrepreneur. E is for elephant. Do you remember they used to do those things?
Uh-huh, yes, indeed.
And C is for cookie. That's
I,
good enough for me. Come on, you remember
okay,
that one?
of course. And it's music involved there. Yeah, very nicely done, Vincent.
Thank you. Um, who would it be that you would love to have? Because I know all the shows and stuff that you're a fan of.
Yes.
So I think I kind of have an idea, but I'm just curious because I've never asked you this question.
Yeah. Look, obviously, I said before, probably The Big Bang Theory is one of my all-time favorite shows. So I'd love to interview anybody from the cast. And I've thought about what you've said to me on more than one occasion. And I'd love to interview some of these people from TV or movies and get their insights of what music they're interested in. So I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
interview Jim Parsons from The Big Bang Theory and talk about his time on The Big Bang Theory. I'd love to interview someone, I just threw out a name like that, somebody like him and say, what music did you grow up listening to? Kind of take it from a whole different, kind of make it music related for me, but with people who are not into music. I just think that would kind of be cool. And to that point, I don't think I've ever shared this, maybe not even with you. And a lot of my guests probably won't even know who this person is. But if you do watch The Big Bang Theory, there was a guy on there, Bert, and he was a recurring character, but not part of the cast. And I know, and he makes it very open, that he's a big metal fan. He
Hmm.
loves Queensryche. He does comedy stand up and he has music involved in it. And I've tried back in like 2020 or 2021 to get him on the show to talk about his comedy album, which is music related, heavy metal related, to talk about his love of metal. And if you go on his website and look at his shirts, they look like the Poison logo and the Queensryche logo. He's Iron Maiden. He's clearly into all the music we talk about. I've tried that with no luck, but yeah, if I was going to do a celebrity interviews like that, I'd love, look, Henry Winkler. I'd love to talk to him about, what music, what did he think about the Happy Days theme song and what music? And he was obviously the guy banging the jukebox. And was he into music and what type? I'd just love to have those kind of conversations with those guys and
Well,
girls.
I'm gonna give you the theme right now. It'll be the celebrity desert island album.
Yes. Yes. I would love, my problem is quite honestly, I mean, I'm throwing out some bigger names here, and I just don't have connections with those PR teams. So I said before, a lot of the musicians I get on the show are through their PR teams. They contact me. I don't want to say no work for this, but I'm not the one initiating the interviews. I don't have an in with these actors and actresses, and it would involve me trying to get in that area, which I haven't been so far.
Well, I'll stop you right there because you never had an in before you started the show, and
Of course.
somehow you got the in.
Of course.
So I'm not gonna allow that to be your excuse to,
Yes.
you
Well,
know,
well, look,
especially since you have a subscriber base of. And
yes.
how many subscribers do you have?
Well, across all my platforms, I think it's like 75,000.
That's more than the three we had in your room when we used to listen to music.
Yes.
You
Yes,
know,
indeed. Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And look, obviously it's something I can potentially pursue.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, when I started doing this, I didn't have all the contacts and I had to pursue some of them myself. After I interviewed Paul Stanley, I had a bunch of people pursue me, which made
Mm-hmm.
my job a little bit easier at that point. It's just a matter of carving out the time to find this new area to reach out to. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love the idea. Like I said, Brian Passan, I think is his name, is the guy who played Bert on Big Bang Theory. And I thought that would be a good first way to kind of dip the toe in. And I never got anywhere with it, unfortunately, but that would have been fun to me.
Is that dip the toe or dip the toe?
Oh, dip the toe. I'm sorry, I
Okay.
misspoke. Yes, dip the toe.
Dip the toe.
Uh,
Okay. That's good. Now, that being said, how come you haven't had Gene Simmons on your show?
I've tried, and I've tried as recently as 6 weeks ago, and I was told perhaps in early 2025. So it's never been a no. It's in fact, I said to you before, my poll interview started with me setting up an interview with Gene Simmons. And we were a go, and we were going to do it right before he left for Dubai. And then it was going to be right after he got back from Dubai. So I've never been told no by their team. I had to prove my viewership. I had to prove my subscribers and all of that, because I'm getting these interviews, the Paul one and potentially Eugene one in the future, from people in the camp I absolutely do not know, right? So I know their names from the email, but I do not know these people. So I had to prove my credentials to them. Again, I was told recently that, hey, Gene could happen. And look, I would love to, because I've done Paul, I've done Ace. I said before, Peter would be my request. Um, I'd love to interview every guy from Kiss. The bands I grew up listening to, whether it was Kiss, Kicks, Night Ranger. Whenever I have those kind of guys on, to me, it's for me personally, it's the most exciting. I have to try to be professional with it, but oh hell yeah, I'd love to have Gene on.
That being said, since this is your 300th episode and it might have been mentioned before, why don't you tell the viewers about your first encounter or lack thereof with Gene Simmons when you were in the 90s? I think it was the 90s. The phone call. We'll call it
Oh, okay. I was like,
call.
encounter. I was like,
if it was an episode of Seinfeld, it would be called the phone call.
The phone call. That's right. Yes. Oh man. Yes. This is very.
And this all predates YouTube.
Oh yeah.
Social media. I mean,
this was
iTunes.
This
iPods.
was 1994 or three. I want to say it was 1994. Yeah, it had to be 1994, and I know that for a fact because, all right, at the time in the 90s, I had a business, legitimate, licensed through New York State business to sell Kiss merchandise. And if you remember, Vin, you made a website for me back in the early 90s. And I actually found like a disc or something that had that website on it, right? And it was licensed. I used to deal with Sony signatures. I get all the contacts, call the companies, order the merchandise, and then resell it. While I was doing that and getting that set up, Gene Simmons contacted me, wanting to know what I was doing, wanted to know about my business. Now, again, this is before the reunion. So this is during, I'll say, the lean 90s years, that 94, 95 time period. But Gene calls me at work and I'm not there. It's a Saturday or a Sunday, but I think it was a Saturday. And he leaves a message on my voicemail at work to call him at his hotel. And he leaves his hotel number. Right. And he gave the slap bass, right? And if you understand that reference, put it in the comments, because then I know you're a big Kiss fan. I get in on Monday. I'm playing my voicemails. Hi, Mike. This is Gene Simmons. I'm like, all right, who's playing a joke on me right now? And I'm listening and I'm like, holy shit, no, that's really Gene Simmons, And now I'm like, God damn, he called me on Saturday. He's not gonna still be there. Like instantly call. And they punch me into his room. I'm like, oh man, I'm going to talk to Gene Simmons. How freaking cool is this? And it voicemail or something picks up. So I have to leave a message in his room. And I leave a message and I say, all right, sorry I didn't get back. I was at work. Call me back. And this is the phone number.
Before there was cell phones, obviously.
Before there was cell phones, there's no cell phones, no texting, and none of that type of stuff. So I'm like, all right, hopefully he'll call back. Stupid move I make. 12 o'clock comes. I go to lunch with my coworkers, not John and Jay. I knew you were going to say it. I had to beat you to it. And I get back from lunch. Hi, Mike. This is Gene Simmons. I'm like, God damn! Like I'm gone from my desk for like 45 minutes. And that's when he called me back. And at that point, he was like, yeah, I'm checking out of my hotel in a couple of minutes. You can call my secretary and just give her the information. And I ended up never connecting with him. I still have both of those phone messages on an audio cassette somewhere. I've got to dig that out and transfer. I don't have a digital copy of that. I've digitized almost every other thing in my life in the last year, but not that. I gotta find that audio tape and digitize that, because I saved, because again, 24-year-old me, I'm trying to think, had I met anybody from Kiss yet? I'd met Ace Frehley. I don't think I had ever met Gene Simmons at that point. I think the first time I met, I probably did the year before on the Alive 3 when they did that. But getting a phone call from Gene Simmons, holy crap. but I blew it. I blew it. And I don't know how come he had my work number and not my home number. That's the part. I guess when
Yeah.
I set up the business, I probably left my work number because I was making these phone calls to purchase the merchandise 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And they probably said, what phone number could we contact you at? And I said, well, I'll give my work number because that's where these companies will be able to find me
Yeah.
9 to 5, Monday to Friday.
Before cell phones.
Right, of course. To give them my home number, if they were trying to contact me, I would never be home Monday through Friday. That must be why Gene had my work number, but god damn.
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
speak with Gene on the phone years later, but I missed that opportunity. Yeah. Like so
Mm.
when you first asked me, I'm like, an encounter with Gene. What are you talking about? I guess I tried to push that one out of my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, did
uh,
you ever call the secretary?
Yes, I did. And I think she was just like, and obviously that was not nowhere near exciting and very
Well,
anticlimactic. Yeah. I think I was just like, yeah, I have a license. I want to sell Kiss merchandise. I'm going to have a, a pamphlet that I mail out to people. I'm trying to get a website set up. And she's like, all right, thanks. I'll let you know.
yeah.
Like it was like, all right, what the hell is the point of that? But
Yeah.
okay. I often wonder sometimes what would have Gene been asking me about? I mean, it was all legit, but I wonder what he would have been asking me about. But it just shows to me how involved he was with the business side of things. I would not think, I mean, again, I know it was the lean years, but I would not think that Gene Simmons would know that this little old guy in Brooklyn at 24, 25 years old who's trying to start up a business is going to sell Kiss merchandise. And Gene would be like, oh, I'll give him a call. I
Yeah.
just wouldn't think that would happen.
Yeah. Well, as you said, lean years, they maybe were pulling whatever stores they can to make as much money as they can, you
Yeah,
know? All
probably. Probably.
right. So here's my last and final question that I have
Oh,
on my list at
all
least.
right.
What
I've made it
guests,
through.
exactly, what guests would you like to have on the show for episodes 301 and forward? I know you named a couple that
Yeah.
but are there anybody else?
Yeah, look, I always say this. I'd probably be scared to death of doing this interview. I'd love to have John Lydon on my show, Sex Pistols lead singer. I've been a fan for 40 years. I love how forthright he is with his
Mm-hmm.
opinions, and he definitely speaks his mind. I say I'd be scared because I could see me asking him something and him like totally going off or whatever. So, but man, I would love to do that because again, I just grew up a huge Sex Pistols fan. I don't think this one would ever happen. I'd love to have Gwen Stefani on, a little bit different than the rock artists that I have on, but I just in the 90s, I loved No Doubt, and she's to me a music icon. And I love, love, love when I ruffled feathers on my Facebook page last year and I said Gwen Stefani is more recognizable than Sting in
Mm,
2024. And oh man, the abuse I got from people. I said, people, I'm not saying more talented. I'm not saying better artist. I'm not saying better singer. I'm not saying, I'm just saying to the average person, more recognizable by face. And oh man, I just love it. So I'd love to have her on. And I'd love to have Rivers Cuomo on from Weezer. Weezer's my second favorite band, probably behind Kiss. I was excited when I had their bass player on, Scott, a couple of years
mm-hmm.
ago. I'd
Mm-hmm.
love to have Rivers on. So when you talk about 300 and beyond, if any of those guys, I would. And John Lydon, I actually did go back and forth once with his team last year. It went nowhere. I don't think that'll ever happen. But as you taught me with Paul Stanley, never say never.
Mm-hmm.
And Rivers is too shy. I don't think he'd ever do any kind of things like that. And Gwen Stefani is too big and probably too much of an ego to say, I'll go on Mike Brunn's podcast.
Well, as far as Rivers, Kelly Clarkson, Mike Brunn, come on. I mean,
Exactly.
you're about even.
Exactly.
I
And
mean,
I sent you that Kelly Clarkson clip. Did you ever watch it?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
How freaking awkward. She's just a bundle of energy to begin with. And he's just like so like just chill and laid back. And she's like, am I overwhelming you? And he's like, no.
yeah,
He's giving like one
yeah,
word answers.
yeah.
But he's obviously not going to turn down publicity like going on the Kelly Clarkson show. But it's easy to turn down being on Mike. I met Weezer backstage in 2010 before one of their shows, and each of the band members, besides Rivers, took photos with everybody. Rivers did not take photos one on one with anybody, but just walked around with an acoustic guitar singing one of their songs, never personally interacting with people. And I remember that night saying he's obviously awkward, even in this environment that he's walking around with a guitar because that's his comfort zone, and he could sing a song,
Mm.
and it's just he's comfortable doing that. So look, Rivers, I would love to. I'd put that maybe number two behind Peter Criss, but I don't think it'll ever happen.
Famous last
Yes,
words, and I'll leave it
famous
at
last
that.
words. That's right. Famous last words.
Well, we talked about a lot. I've asked you everything on my bulleted
I
list.
like the serious Vincent interviewer.
Well,
I like that.
I
I
can
like,
be a grown up every once in a
yes,
while.
yes. My guests, not my guests, my people who watch the show are going to be like, "Did you have an imposter Vincent on this week? He was
Yeah.
very serious."
Although I did say the word "thode,"
You
so
did say though, yes, an entrepreneur.
entrepreneur. Well, it's something to really, like I said, be proud of, and it's a landmark for you. And is it landmark? Is
Yeah, you
landmark a
could say a
place?
landmark. Yeah, it is, but
You
whatever.
know,
We'll
people know
go
what
with
I'm trying to
landmark.
say. We'll go with
Yes.
that. And yeah, so I really wanted to put forth, some seriousness about what this achievement is. As I've ridden through all 300 episodes, even if I wasn't on them, I was aware of them, and
Yep.
we spoke about them. So,
Yeah. And you know what? I'm going to say this. I didn't mention some, I guess, like I know you didn't ask about this one in particular, but I love when I had Kip Winger on. That comes to mind right now because I remember a couple of people saying that Kip was a very tough interview, that he's very stone faced. He gives very short answers. And I remember a few times when I asked him questions, he paused and like, that's a very good question. I've
mm-hmm.
never been asked that before.
Yeah.
And I ended up having longer than I was supposed to with him. And you know, when I do interviews and I get that kind of reaction from the artist, to me, that's cool. When I had Nita Strauss on, right? And that's one of my favorite interviews I did, even though I'll admit I'm not the biggest Nita Strauss fan. I love her as a guitarist, but I asked her about some of the instrumentals she recorded, and she's like, thank you so much for, nobody who interviews me asks me about the instrumentals. I'm so glad you brought that up. And just seeing that kind of reaction from some of my musical guests, to me, gets me excited. And it's one of the reasons I
Mm-hmm.
love to do this. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention not just having you on, but Super M has been on a number of times. And I love when he comes on, and we have a lot of fun, the three of us. Billy has been on a few times, right? So I love having even just, I'll say, some of our friends. Your brother has been on a few times,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to me, those are, I know we spent almost all of our time talking about the musical guests I've had on, and understandably, but the other half, you, Super M, Billy, your brother, Mike Brenn's been on a few times. Chikini came on early on with me. To me, that's fun, just hanging out with friends and
Mm-hmm.
talking music. And it could be talking Kiss, but a lot of times it could be talking not Kiss. And that's one of the reasons I love doing these look back episodes that we've been doing, is
Mm-hmm.
I love doing some of these non-Kiss things and just talking with friends about music. Um, that's why I wanted to start this to begin with. And that to me still gets me excited when you say, "Hey, we should do an episode this week." I'm like, "Okay, what should we
Yeah.
do it on?" So I
Mm-hmm.
love that. So I will thank you for pushing me to do this. And even at times in the last 5, 6 years when I'm like, maybe I'll give up at 200 episodes, and maybe I'll give up at 200. And you're like, "No, you can't. No, you can't. Come on, this is fun." It's almost like you keep pushing me. No, you
I have
can't
to,
do
I
it.
have to give you a kick in the ass every so often.
Exactly. And so I'll just say thank you to you for keep pushing me. And look, maybe I'll get to 350, maybe I'll get to 400. Maybe I'll be doing this when I'm 90 and we'll be talking about do you remember that new album that came out in 2025?
Mm.
Let's do a look back on that. And you're like, hold on,
Yeah.
I got to take my dentures out and rinse.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So who knows? But I'll thank you for pushing me
No.
over the last 300 episodes.
Been my pleasure, because quite honestly, I enjoy it so much. So,
Yes.
and I enjoy you getting the benefits of, you know, some of the accolades. As I say, you're not getting, nobody's coming there with an award for you, but just
No.
the feedback you get from people. And, again, I'll say, we go to any concert, they say, "Hey, Mike Brunn, Mike Brunn." I'm like, we walk to wherever. I'm like in my mind, 3, 2, 1. Hey, Mike Brunn. I'm like, here we go. So it's kind of
That
fun.
that's been the weirdest part to me because look, let's be honest, when you look at my show and you look at the popularity of other artists, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like 1 grand of sand on one beach in the world, right? Compared to some of these other people. Yet, like I think I told you this summer, I was in Disney with my daughter. Shocker, I know. And I'm online, and somebody's like, "Excuse me, are you Mike Brunn?" I'm like, "Yes." He's like, "I recognize the voice. I listen to your podcast all the time." I'm like,
That's crazy just by the
"Yeah,"
voice.
and yeah, it was crazy. And the guy was so nice. I don't remember his name. My apologies, because I get stopped almost all the time at concerts, which that doesn't surprise me anymore, especially not if it was Kiss related. But being in Disney with my daughter and having somebody just randomly just happen to be online behind me and say he recognized my voice, that was odd. That was odd. But it was nice. I mean, the guy was super nice, but I'm like, wow, never in my wildest dreams, especially because growing up, I'm a very private person overall.
Hmm.
But to have that was like, wow, all right, I guess I'm making an impact on some people out there. And I guess that's kind of cool.
Hmm. I agree. Well, that's all I
That
got.
that's a, do you want
That's
to
all,
wrap the,
folks.
I was gonna say, do you want to wrap the 300 episode?
Alrighty.
Oh man. Well, I'll leave with you then what one of my guests once said to me. That was awesome. That was a lot of
Yeah.
fun. A lot of fun.
Fun with Brunn. That's
Fun.
another.
Oh yes, the Bruce Kulick Fun with
Yes.
Brun. How could I
Fun with
forget
Brunn.
that? And you know
Yes.
what? I didn't mention this, and I'd be remiss if I didn't. I did mention Vinnie Vincent once or twice during this, and I've been fortunate. I had him on 3 or 4 times, and Vinnie was, I'll say, to me, the first major musical artist I've had on my
Hmm.
show. Before that, I had a few different guests on, which were all cool. Whether it was some of the guys from Ace's band, whether it was Keith Valcourt talking about the Vault, the Gene Simmons Vault. But Vinnie Vincent was the first one that was a recorded musician that we grew up buying albums from. And I'll always be thankful for that. I mean, I know a lot of people will say good and bad about Vinny, but to me, I'll always be thankful that because that was the first stepping stone for me where I'd be able to email people and say, I've interviewed Vinny Vincent and I've interviewed Eddie Trunk. I had Eddie Trunk on for 2.5 hours once on my show, which was friggin' awesome. That was early on. And I remember Eddie, I'm thinking I'm going to talk to him for a half hour and we're going for an hour and a half. I'm like, Eddie, do you want to wrap up? He's like, no, I'm having fun. Let's keep going. Let's go. I'm like, Jesus, 11 o'clock at night. I got to go to bed soon, but that was a friggin' blast. But it's kind of crazy to look back on it and just think about all. I know you said you were done, but now I'm having these other thoughts kind of rushing through my mind. And I guess I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention Jack Russell, who did one of his very last video interviews ever with me, and even Gary Corbett, Kiss
Hmm.
keyboardist and Cinderella keyboardist. Both of those guys, I think, did their very last video interview with me, which is just you asked before about people passing away. That's pretty wild to me to think
Hmm.
about. And I knew the second time I interviewed Jack, I told you afterwards he's in rough shape. I didn't expect he was going to pass right away, but I remember hanging up and thinking, oh, that was rough. That was
Yeah.
rough.
I remember you telling me that.
Likewise, when I had from Tesla, Brian Wheat, bass player. He was and he has health issues, and I remember thinking, and thank God he's still with us and hopefully doing better. But I remember thinking, oh, that was rough. He did not seem comfortable during that whole interview, and it just reminds me that all of these musicians that we love are getting older and they have health issues the way you and I and others and our listeners do. And I guess that's what I will close with. Don't take the music that we listen to and the musicians that we listen to for granted, because unfortunately, some of them have been passing away the last few years. I'm sure more will pass away in the coming years. And the music that we grew up listening to will only be memories, which is really sad to think about, you know?
Hmm.
So that's one of the things that I will say, take from this. And it's why I try to have fun with the podcast, because this is not going to be forever. And let's enjoy it
Hmm.
while we still have it.
I agree. Very well said.
Yes. Well, buddy, I think that's a wrap. 300 episodes. Will I do another 300? Probably not, but I never thought I'd do 300 to begin with. So who knows?
That's right.
We could be sitting here in 2030 and we'll be like, so yeah, I'm thinking about retiring in 2 years. I'm going to have more time to do podcasts. I'm going to do one every day. Who
Hmm.
knows?
Hmm.
But who knows? But again, I thank you for pushing me all these years. I thank you for being a big part of the show. I think without you, I wouldn't have a show. Quite honestly, I'd have all these interviews I do, but I wouldn't have a show. So I thank you for that, my bloody, and I look forward to 301 and beyond.
So do I.
All righty. On that note, I guess I will ask everybody who's been a part of the show. First, before I ask, I will say thank you for being a part of the show. Thank you for the comments, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Facebook. What are some of the favorite episodes that we've done, Vincent and I? What are some of the favorite interviews that I've done over the years? Who would you hope I would interview, right? That was a good question you asked me before, Vincent. Who would some of you guys hope I could interview in the future? It surprises me sometimes in my comments, I'll be like, people will be like, oh, Mike, you should interview Joel Hoekstra. And I'm like, here's the link, pat him on twice, So, but who's some of the people that you think I should interview? I'd love to see what some of the people say. And I hope you stick around for the next 20, 50, 100, 300 more episodes, whatever it may be. On that note, I'll go easy on you. We'll do the classic double Ringo.
Double Ringo. Got to do it for the 300.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll talk to you soon. Later.
Later.
Alrighty, there you have it. 300 episodes in the books. I'd like to take a moment and thank all of the guests who have appeared on my show over the last 6 years. Thank you so much. I'd also like to take a moment and thank my buddy Vincent for always pushing me to do the best I can and for helping make the show a success. Thanks so much, buddy. I really appreciate it. But most importantly, from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to thank you, the listeners and the viewers. Without all of you, this show would not be the success it has been, and I look forward to bringing you more episodes in the future. Thanks so much for watching and listening. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you're listening to one of my podcasts, subscribe over there as well. Also, head on over to Facebook and follow my page, The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn, where each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. You could also follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you all next time.